Tonight, it's my distinct honor to introduce our guest speaker tonight. He probably doesn't remember it, but I actually had the privilege of meeting Bob Knowling in 1995. We were both YMCA volunteers. It was a year before I came to work for the Y. We were both on the program, he in a much more prominent position on the program, speaking at a Y conference in Orlando. And when we sat down about 6 months ago to think about who to invite tonight, you can come up with a lot of names. But the thing that I think made me appeal to Bob's name is it sat there on a list of about a dozen names, and we kept going over and over. And Bob is the first person we invited. I don't just say that, Bob, because you're in the room, but that's the truth. We had an A and a B and a C, and you were A. And if you want to Google Bob, you can find a lot of success stories in Fast Company and Forbes magazine and other publications that would make Bob completely worthy of being our speaker tonight. But as I looked at that list and thought about the little bit that I knew about Bob and why I wanted him to talk to us tonight is because Bob Knowling has overcome obstacles and not backed away from challenges. He has 13 siblings. Now, just survive that alone tells me you got something in you. He was a leader in the communications and in technology when those industries were just birthing. And it took courage, I suspect, to show up to work every day because you probably didn't know what you were doing because it was probably a new technology that didn't exist yesterday. And maybe my admiration for him most, and part of in this year as we've really gotten going with Tiger, made me want him to speak to us tonight, is he took a couple of years out of the corporate world and all its financial benefits that came with that about 7 or 8 years ago and gave leadership to what's called the New York Leadership Academy, an academy set up by Michael Bloomberg to train principals to be better leaders, to better educate children. And so I'm honored that we have Bob here tonight because I know he'll inspire us and encourage us as we face our own set of challenges that we too can overcome. Bob?
Thank you, Paul. Obviously, you read the notes sent in by my mother. They told me that I had 30 minutes to talk, and my children would be the first to tell you that anybody that would listen to our father for more than 5 minutes has really got some issues. And I remember in my early youth, I used to go to events, and when it came time for a speaker, half the room would tune out. Most of the young people would go to sleep. And it always intrigued me that people could spend an incredible amount of time saying nothing. And I made a vow to myself that if I ever get to the place where someone would allow me to take a podium, the first thing I'm going to do is be very brief. Number 2, I'm going to make sure that I have something to say that people might be able to take home a nugget or two. And then the third thing is I'm going to be very brief. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you. The stranger from Denver, Colorado, in Jacksonville, of all places, at a gathering of YMCA people. Sleep deprived, having not seen my family since January the 3rd. I made my way here from Thailand. And when I found out last week that your CEO is moving on, I made an inquiry. Well, do they still want me to come to Jacksonville? And the answer was yes. So it is with great pride that I stand before you today, not as your speaker, because I really don't do speeches, but I stand before you for one simple reason. I am a product of the YMCA. This is one of those rare places where we still talk about Christianity. One of those rare places where we talk about giving back. It's one of those places where it's okay to cry. It's okay to rejoice in the accomplishment and contribution of others. You really don't need a speech from me tonight because, Paul, you inspired me with your words, talking about what this institution is. And the reason that I care so deeply for the YMCA is because the YMCA saved my life. I have a book that's coming out this September. My children were given the task of coming up with a title for Dad's book. And they came up with the title, You Can Get There From Here. Well, who is this guy that says he doesn't want to do boring speeches, that he hasn't been to sleep in a couple of days? I'll just give you 2 data points that will sort of give you the gist of what you have produced as a YMCA. The first is that in 2000, I was called by a search company to go interview for a job. It's not unusual. I get pinged for jobs and boards quite often. So I go off to a job interview that lasted 3 hours and 20 minutes to meet with 2 founders of a small company. The first meeting lasted 3 hours. It was with one of the founders that it clicked for us. The next meeting lasted 20 minutes, and as those people who know the story, it really needed to last only 5 because at the end of 5, I didn't like him, and at the end of 10, I was certain he didn't like me. That small company is now worth close to $400 billion. So the product you have produced, ladies and gentlemen, is someone who can't understand that Google's a pretty decent company. Data point number 2 about Bob. One of my clients is the Sultan of Brunei. It's a very small country of 370,000 people. There are 0 taxes there. Everyone has health care, 99% employment. Sitting with His Majesty, and I have trouble over there using that term because I only know of one His Majesty. But we were sitting and about to have coffee when he asked me the question because he sees me taking notes on an iPad. Well, Robert, what's the future of the iPad? I'm thinking about buying some of those for folks here. Well, in the audience tonight, there is a very good friend of mine who I would like to introduce all of you to. He's the CEO of a little small company here in Jacksonville called Meridian Technologies. Chris Pillay, why don't you stand up? I'd like you to introduce and meet Chris Pillay, the CEO of Meridian. Stand up, Chris. Welcome. Thank you. I had him stand for 2 reasons. Number 1, there's another volunteer, folks. He hasn't found his passion, and I think he needs some YMCA in his life. Number 2, Chris has 2 wonderful children, 2 9-year-olds, a girl and a boy. His boy is an extraordinary young man who builds computers. If you want to ask him what's fun to do at work, he will tell you it's writing Linux code. And he's one of the smartest young men I know. So I said to the Sultan, I have a colleague that I will check with to determine what's going to be the new feature set in the iPad, and I'll let you know. I called back to the United States to Mr. Pillay, and I said, Chris, I know that normally when I call I want to talk to you, but today I need to speak with Easton. Easton gets on the phone, and I ask him, Easton, what's going to be the new feature functionality of the iPad. He says, Mr. Knowling, it's going to have a camera, and it's going to have this, and it's going to... He says, only about those. I said, well, that's all? He says, well, everything else you'll get because you just download the application. I went back into His Majesty, and I said, His Majesty, here's what's going to happen to the iPad. He says, do you have that on good authority? And I said, I most certainly do. So I want you to know that this YMCA product you have didn't understand Google and relies upon a 9-year-old. Let's get our evening to a close. You're here because there's a purpose. The moral decay of this country is an all-time low. There are only 2 institutions that are in the business of saving lives anymore. We can't pray at school. We can't even use the word Christ in public. And the church and the YMCA are the only institutions left that are making a difference. And I stopped by tonight just to inform all of you that our work is not done. As the 7th child of 13, I was the first to ever graduate from high school. And I'll never forget the day my mother came home and said, I found an organization where all you kids can go and learn to swim and can be with other children. And she didn't tell us at the time, but they also would let us do it for free. And all of my brothers and sisters, I'm the only one that walked over to the Y. And I went there every day. And it was there that I found my moral character. It was there that I found the belief system that I could be somebody. Yes, I learned how to play basketball and football and went on to star in those sports in high school and college. But the most important contribution that was made is that the YMCA taught me what it meant to be a Christian. And with all the things I've done in my professional life, I always come back to home base, and that home base is Christ is at the center of everything I do. So I came to tell you to not forget the sea, to continue to expand, to continue to have more Tiger Academies, to continue to embrace your volunteer base. And unfortunately, it's like the minister at my church who used to spend a lot of time complaining every Sunday about all the people that were not there, to the point where the congregation got pretty fed up with him beating up on all of us who were there every Sunday. So they appointed me to give him some coaching. So as I exited the church one Sunday, I said, Reverend, great sermon today. And oh, by the way, all of us who heard it, who hear it every Sunday, we can't do anything about those people you're angry at for not being here. Several months later, Easter came, and as you well know, our church was packed that day. And at the end of his sermon, instead of his normal close, he said, I'd like today to make a special thanks and appreciation to all of you who are here. And since I now have you here at Easter, and I do spend a lot of time talking about you when you're not here, I want to also wish all of you a Merry Christmas. So unfortunately, my words today, all of it resonates with you because you are in the movement. You are staff members that care and that are shaping lives. You're volunteers who are making a difference. And I leave you with just 3 little data points today. And I hope that as you go about your work tomorrow, you'll think about these 3 little data points. Paul, thank you for letting me be a part of the first. And I will join you in your capital campaign. I told my wife a long time ago, we'll never be rich because I will always give it away. But more importantly, we're going to be rich in spirit because for he who much is given, much is required. My 3 data points tonight that I'd like you to just give some thought to as we leave this place. The first is, I'd like for you to spend it all. What do you mean, spend it all? I believe that you must never go to bed at night not giving your best. Your best effort at work, your best effort at play. It's almost to the point of saying that as an athlete, you never go to the locker room with energy left. So spend it all. Mrs. Knowling has taken that figure literally. But it means to give your very best every day. Ask yourself every evening, did I make a difference? Did I contribute? Because the work you do is so special. Number 2, set goals for yourself. 95% of the people in the world that set goals achieve them. And I've been setting goals ever since I was 7 years old. You come home with me tonight, you'll see on the mirror the 2 goals for this year. I started a journey of losing weight. I'm down 56 pounds and I have 40 to go. Set goals. Write them down, look at them every day. And the little tip I'll leave you is that the people that write down their goals and look at them every day, they are more successful than all of the people who don't. So get goal-oriented. And the last point I'd like to leave with you is I'd like to make sure that all of us practice Ruth. You know, in the biblical days, when the Sadducees and the Pharisees had fought for so long and finally had made amends, they got their communities together and they had to decide about the nurturing and feeding of people. Back in those days, the word for helping was called Ruth, the opposite of ruthlessness. And so they combined, and they took care of each other, the nurturing and the feeding. And I'd like for all of us to be practicing more Ruth. Peggy Bryan, congratulations on being a Volunteer of the Year. We all should aspire to practice Ruth, that notion of nurturing and feeding. And you know, if you get to the point in your life where you have spent it all, you've written down all those goals and you've just become success-oriented, you've practiced Ruth to the best of your ability, and maybe at the end of this journey, you will have done all that God asked of any of us. This wonderful organization has been responsible for everything that I do professionally. And I thank you for it. Every time I'm on a TV camera and someone wants to hear my words, I think about the YMCA. Every success that I've had, it all harkens back to the YMCA. Who would have ever thunk that poor kid who at one point in his life was homeless could sit down at the table and sip tea with the Queen, to sit in the President's box at the State of the Union address, to ride on Air Force One, to sleep in whatever bedroom that was, I slept there. Who would have ever thunk? But the contribution that you make, you never know how far it can take a kid. So September the 29th, there was a book that comes out called You Can Get There From Here. And at the root of that book is a tribute to the greatest organization I know. It's called the Y.